Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Subscribing to My Podcast. Because I have a new guest featured every week, it makes it very difficult to maintain consistent viewership. So if there's one thing that you can do to support me or the guest featured on the show, it's by interacting with my channel in every way that you can. You can always decide to unsubscribe later if you decide that you hate me or my show. With that plugging aside, enjoy my discussion with
Cebastian Chan and Layne Paul are both the president and vice president of the Young Americans for Liberty here on campus. Now, even though the organization has been here for about a year and a half, they just got approved via the OU government, so I figured I'd talk to them. I've seen them tabling, and I've talked to them on Instagram for a while, and they've been posting a bit, so I'm really excited to get into some of these more libertarian issues and hear about what the organization and platform is all about. But why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourself, and then tell the viewers some important things they should know about you.
Well, my name's Layne Paul. I'm the OU Young Americans for Liberty chapter president. I'm a junior level chemical engineering major here at the university. Looking forward to getting some work in the oil industry and fighting for liberty.
Awesome. I'll go ahead. I'm Cebastian Chan. I'm the chapter vice president of YAL at OU. I'm a freshman, first year construction student, and I'd like to open up myself to more dialogue and to more communication.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about what the Young Americans for Liberty stands for. Like, what do you guys do? What are your guys' platforms? And then how do you guys operate as, like, a political organization?
So, basically, we are a pro-liberty, non-partisan kind of a policy organization. So, it's kind of like, for those of you who know Ron Paul, It's kind of based on a lot of philosophy from Ron Paul, ending the Fed, anti-war, pro-civil individual liberties, and kind of stuff like that.
What he said. So, a little more into the historical background and context of how Young Americans for Liberty started out as a grassroots organization. From my understanding, from my recollection, it started in 2008, 9-ish, right after Ron Paul's loss at the Republican National Convention, where he failed to gather enough delegates votes to win the Republican primary to become the next president of the U.S. And we started out mainly as the reactionary group following that movement, while you may try to end us in that way, in what way or another, we are still going on. The movement lives on, right? So, and we've later gone more and more proactive than we should have been reactionary, which is really good, which have led us to go into the Capitol multiple times and then go on to lead and tell these politicians and make them accountable, and then to make them start going into pressing issues, have a say in it at least, and at least support the basic foundations of our personal liberties, and to defend and support, like as they've promised in their oath, right? So that's what we advocate for.
Yeah, and so when we're getting into the liberties and what this means, what are some, like you kind of mentioned the Fed earlier and some of these other concepts, but what are some of your guys' bigger platform points? Like if you were to explain to somebody what liberties you're talking about, what libertarianism means, what are some of the most popular issues where you guys kind of have a say in?
I'd say pro free speech, pro 2A, so very against like a lot of public universities now have been catching some heat for trying to shut down free speech on campus. And one of our fights that we have in some other states, we're working on getting at to this one is being able to students 21 or older are able to conceal carry on campus.
Yeah, I think when I think of libertarianism and I think about one of the most popular conversations, to me it definitely comes to gun rights. And I have a lot of thoughts about specifically gun rights on campus, but if you guys could kind of paint the picture for the general gun rights argument, why do you think that we need to protect the right to own guns? And then I guess what is the libertarian argument for why we should have that right in the first place?
Well, so I keep on seeing the saying, the Second Amendment guarantees the First Amendment. And the Founding Fathers have seen, from what I've read on, they've probably foreshadowed that the Americans, they should take up arms in which the government might become too authoritarian. It is not necessarily a left or right issue per se, whether you should or shouldn't own a gun and bear arms for yourself so that you could defend yourself and in your viewpoint and then for others. It's a very selfless trait to have. And in light of recent news, I think it's only more imperative that the Second Amendment was there for a reason. It's a timeless concept. While it could be amended or re-amended for that matter, on which the language may not sound 2026 like, then again, like it's like it still counts for like your basic liberty. And I've read on the news where folks have been taking up arms because like they have their speculations on which the police or like the government is going to become more and more authoritarian, especially with the way like the news is trying to alienate us, really. I think it's only more imperative now than it is ever. Like, I might be exaggerating right now, but that's at least how I see it. You could disagree with me for that matter. Go ahead, but like I might just stick to this route, you know?
Yeah, and I think that the biggest argument that I see against gun rights is that, like, yes, we should have a right to it, but I think there are a lot of emotional appeals to tragic events like school shootings and other things like that, and there seems to be a correlation between gun ownership and then gun deaths, which is arguably the purpose of guns, other than maybe hunting and some other things. And so I guess when people bring up gun deaths, how do you guys react to that? Like, how is the cost worth the benefit? Is there a middle ground we can reach here? What about restrictions and regulations? Like, when people bring up these concepts of tragedies involving guns, how do you guys respond to this?
Well, let's see. So when we're talking about tragedies, like, for example, we got Sandy Hook. It's one of the first recorded school shootings in the United States. And you got people that are worried with criminals who illegally obtain firearms in the case to commit these mass tragedies. And I feel like that is kind of shows more reason of why we should protect the civil liberties of every individual to own a firearm, because the problem with stopping individuals from owning weaponry is that if you take these tools, because that's what they are, they're tools. If you take these tools away from the individual to defend themselves, you're only stopping those that are lawful, law-abiding citizens from being able to defend themselves from those who are already illegally obtaining these guns to commit tragedies.
Yeah, I think there's a couple interesting implications of that. I think that the first, in a lot of cases of these school shootings, I think that the guns are obtained legally, but they're transferred ownership in a way that is undocumented. So like maybe like a friend gets it legally and then they give it to this person or something along those lines. And so the idea would be that if it were illegal, maybe the origin of this gun, like maybe somebody. So yeah, we'll stay with that too. That the convenience of having a gun given to you might increase your chances of using that gun. And so if we make it illegal, all of the legal acquirings of guns that are given to other people, and now you have a gun, and it's easier to commit a crime with that gun, maybe banning guns would lower that happening. And it seems logically that they would. Does this kind of make sense, or like
No, I
how
get
do
what
you
you're
guys
saying,
feel
yeah.
about this? Yeah.
So, let's see. Yeah, so you're saying, like, so a guy, he goes out, buys a gun. He's got a friend that wants a gun, and he gives it to him, and the friend takes it and shoots up a school, right?
Sure.
So, the problem, one of the problems is that obviously with that happening, you can't do a background check on the guy that's not buying the gun, right? So, yeah, that is like a problem in the community for those very unfortunate mass incidents. However, it's kind of like how do I want to word this? Although there have been unfortunate things that have happened, it's kind of like you're still trying to I don't know why I can't think of the word. You're keeping everyone down because of the bad actions of few.
Yeah. Well, the idea would be that with the restrictions, you could have stopped the initial purchase, the initial legal purchase, and then the other concept, and this is maybe where we'll get into guns on college campuses, is the problem is that the idea is that when you own a gun, you are prone to temptation to using that gun. So maybe a normal situation, you feel comfortable escalating that situation because you know you have a gun. If it gets to a higher point, you know you'll be able to defend yourself, and so you're more likely to escalate a situation because you know you have the gun. You know you're safe. And so there's no end to this where you would be unsafe, and so you're okay escalating a situation. You're also very prone, if you have like a mental illness, to ending a situation with a gun as well. And so I think that the idea is that even though what's technically happening is illegal, like you can't buy a gun legally and then give it to somebody who didn't purchase that gun legally. You can't. That's illegal. You can't do that.
Right, it's illegal.
However, with that person being able to buy it, we're increasing the convenience of that other person when they have the gun now too. And so if we could stop, even though the person who got the gun illegally is still mentally ill or still unstable, without the convenience of having the gun, they might have never committed the action in the first place. And so if we can stop the gun from the legal buyer, then maybe we could be preventing mass shootings or bad uses of guns, if that makes sense. The idea is that it might be true that these people are mentally ill, but without a gun they wouldn't be committing these actions because they're not that mentally ill. But now that they have a gun, it's like, well, I might as well act on this because I have one. That's the anti-gun argument for why stopping the sales of guns would prevent school shootings. Is this kind of like unconvincing to you guys, or how do you feel?
I see.
It does go beyond that in the context of like we criminals wouldn't care whether they hurt other people or not hurt other people. For what matter is, I do not know what their intentions were beforehand or what led up to their actions, which is never an excuse to justify them. I'm not trying to shelter them for why they've chose to go on that route, right? But to say that we should try to make it inconvenient for the local person to purchase a firearm without even the single thought in their brain to commit such atrocity is not convincing. It's false. Like, it's refutable. It is an irresponsible act upon that to shoot up a school, to instigate for that matter. Then again, like, they don't care whether they are doing the right thing or not doing the right thing, the criminal. But as for folks like me and him, and then like basically 35% of Oklahoma, I think we outnumber the irresponsible users of guns.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I think that the idea is that you might have somebody who's not necessarily a criminal. You just have a somewhat normally emotionally unstable person, and then you give them a gun. Now that normal emotional instability can now be weaponized. Like, a very normal emotional instability can now be weaponized, and it can increase the violence in any interaction or in a situation just because they have the gun. And so you can say things like there's a larger population of people that can use guns responsibly, but the question is, can we maybe have restrictions, or can we maybe have limitations that can still keep that population of people while also restricting, like, people who are normal but because they have a gun are maybe more likely to use it in a way they shouldn't. And that also doesn't include mental illness and people who shouldn't be getting a gun who currently are maybe allowed to get a gun because of the lack of restrictions. So I guess, do you guys have any ways that we can responsibly limit the way that people get guns while keeping the Second Amendment alive? Like, are there any concessions you can give to make buying guns harder, or how do you feel about just making buying guns harder but not impossible?
So the problem with restricting quote restricting access to firearms, it's not like necessarily unconstitutional to say, so on top of your background check, they also require you to, let's say, get a mental analysis in order that you have to show when you go to buy a gun, right? But it is kind of in that gray area because the Constitution already guarantees you that right, no matter criminal, non-criminal, unless you're a felon, which you lose your rights when you become felon, but it guarantees the right for you to say what you please, to own guns, and restricting a right for somebody to go out, like, let's say somebody, wants to go out, a responsible gun owner, and purchase a new gun. Well, now they've got to go through the process of going and getting a mental test done every single time they want to purchase a gun. And it's basically seems more of a way to almost implement a tax on those who are not mentally unstable.
To me, and I'm a pretty pro-gun person, I like the idea of restrictions because, to me, in the way that you've just described it, I think that is certainly a worthy cost for having guns. Is just it takes a little bit longer, because the idea is that the people who are committing these atrocities with guns, maybe with a higher barrier for entry, would not be motivated to go through all of those hoops to buy a gun. And so I guess I don't necessarily see the purpose of avoiding taking more tests or more precautions and making it longer to get guns. Maybe it's something that you do once a year or something like that, like a renewable license that you get. So it doesn't have to be every gun that you get, but it's something that you have to renew, once a year or something like that. I think that it taking longer to get guns is surely a worthy consequence for maybe preventing some of these instances from happening. I also think one of the frustrating things, and this is something that I had heard, but that the government won't allow for there to be an online database for the guns that are owned. Everything has to be done on paper, so that they can't use algorithms to track, code the data, or understand more about the people who buy the guns. To me, I think that this is kind of a ridiculous restriction to have, and I think that if we had better tracking, you could still keep the guns with tracking on it. But to me, I want to defend our ability to have guns, especially with recent administration and past administrations too. I understand the foundation that we need to be safe against a government. You're seeing the externalities of this right now. You maybe saw them 4 years ago. You're seeing the externalities. So I think it's important to have a gun. But I do not get the argument for why we shouldn't have higher restrictions for it. Is any of this unconvincing to you guys? How do you feel about that?
I mean, so let's say you have somebody who, all right, let's say we're in a world where we've got this implemented where every year you've got to pay for a license that shows that you are mentally stable enough to own a firearm.
It could be free, too. I wouldn't mind if it was free, but yeah.
Well, I mean, nothing in the world's free, right?
Well, the driver's license is... Well, is that free? I can't remember.
No.
It's been a while since I've
I mean, shoot, my license was like $90.
Okay.
So, I mean, if they could find a way to do it for free, it might not be as bad, but realistically, I don't see that happening. I would see it as a probably expensive thing that you would have to renew every year, and for those that are less fortunate, that need, or let's say they're less fortunate, they live in not a great part of town, and they would like to be able to defend themselves, but they cannot afford to do both. So they can't afford to get the license and a firearm to be able to defend themselves. And in that sense, it's almost like you are so the idea behind it is to prevent those who are mentally unstable from obtaining guns, but in all actuality, you're preventing less fortunate individuals from obtaining a firearm legally.
Yeah, I think maybe that would be a pragmatic question about how much it would cost to do license, because some states have license that you are required to get for guns. Do those already cost money?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Are you guys against that in general? Or?
I think every state should have constitutional carry.
Oh, okay, in the same way that we do here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I think that you could... I think there are a lot of things that maybe the economy could do to balance out, like maybe the price of guns would be less to account for the increase in the licensure. Maybe we can have government programs that provide discounts. What I'm saying, I think that there are solutions to the money issue, and I also think that, again, when you're looking at the cost of making it more difficult to buy guns, that's the intention. That's like that's a feature, not a bug of the process. And so if you're saying that there are people who wouldn't be able to get guns because of however much the licensure costs, like maybe it's true that the licensure costs an amount of money at the beginning, but you don't have to buy it every year, but you have to renew it every year or something like that. I'm not sure how fishing licenses work. It's been a while since I've went in to renew my license for a lot of things. So, but we have ways to get around these issues, I feel, and so I think better conversation is needed. But I think that I even if it costs money, I don't think that the point of it is to slow it down, I think. And so that's, to me, like a worthy solution, because it still doesn't make it impossible, especially if the price is reasonable or something like that. But I understand the concern. What I will say, too, is that with the college campuses, this, to me, feels like an even more vulnerable population, a more prone population to misusing firearms if they were on campus. I don't know if you've met a lot of college people, but the amount of people who commit violence against just people who have set up tables, like, and are talking about political issues, who like throw stuff at them, kick them, tear their stuff down, with the amount of alcohol that's present on campuses, in different areas, in dorms, in fraternities and stuff like this. To me, this seems like a very prone to violent population, and I think that increasing the amount of guns would increase kind of what I talked about earlier, which is you have kind of normal people who, with the accessibility of guns, are more likely to use that gun, given the fact that they have it. How do you guys feel with the college population specifically? How do you guys feel about this?
I feel that is all the more reason to allow guns to be allowed on campus, because, first of all, if you've got somebody that is already unstable enough that they are going to go up to somebody's table and physically attack them, or go out and, get drunk at the bar and then start a bar fight, I feel like that's all the more reason why you should be able to right then and there be able to defend yourself from those that are starting the issue. So, yes, there are... How do I want to put this? So, your point that you're making is that you think it shouldn't be allowed because there's already so many violent individuals on campus, right?
I would say that it would increase violence and probably increase mortal violence as well. Yeah.
So, I think that it would actually cause a decrease, because knowing that, if you were going to commit inaction, you've got other people around you that could be possibly armed, and it would make you less wanting to attack somebody. Or these horrible school shootings where criminals are already coming onto campus illegally with a firearm could be stopped by a student that was carrying that day, instead of having 30 students killed because the police took a while to show up.
Yeah, and I get this argument as well, and I think that there's a lot of truth to it. What I will say is that the fear of death does not prevent these school shootings, because if you're already willing to do an action like a school shooting, you admit that your life is over. And that's why a lot of these people end up killing themselves after, or they spend a lifetime in prison after, because they know that. So I don't think that a fear of death is going to stop people from doing this. But what you're probably saying is that it might stop the event earlier than it would have without the guns.
Right.
So you're saying that they would be stopped. What I will say is that, and I agree with you that this is a positive of this. I do agree with you. What I will say, though, is that the type of mistake or the type of injury that happens with a gun takes 1 second to fully actualize. Like, one gunshot can cause the death of one person, and so we've already lost in that situation. And so what the idea is that if people have a higher propensity to use that gun just because they have it, it doesn't matter if they get killed. They've already shot somebody. They've already killed somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so preventing it is good. Like, we should prevent it as early as possible. So I agree with you. But I guess what the anti-gun argument is saying is that more people are going to use their guns. And that mistake is permanent and it's instant. And so stopping it earlier is good. But causing more to happen is also bad. And so it's kind of like a numbers game. Do you think that we would be preventing more deaths by allowing guns on campus than the deaths we would cause? Because I'm somewhat skeptical of this, I think.
On states on where, how would you put it? Carrying guns in campuses are already allowed. There really is no difference whether, because you could carry a gun in a Texas college or in, was it Texas or?
Texas.
Yeah, Texas is probably the best example of this. It did not significantly increase the violence nor it significantly decreased the violence. But so it's a big net neutrality with a slight positivity, and that slight positivity which outnumbers and outmatches the negative extremes of the topic is an added benefit. And given how following, was it the first school shooting? No, the first college mass shooting that's how occurred in the University of Texas. Texas took into action into allowing carrying firearms into college campuses, which ultimately prevented a good amount of possible threats from happening and possible acts of it ever being instigated and coming into fruition. All the more reasons to mess around, find out. If you mess around too much, there will be consequences to what will happen.
Yeah, I think that the people who are committing these actions are fully aware of what the consequence would be. But you're saying that they've already done this in a school and they didn't find an increase in gun usage. They just found a percentage in gun deaths. Is that what you're saying in Texas? Or in the school in Texas?
Oh, pardon. Let me rephrase that because I went over myself. Well, it did not significantly increase the violence now that Texans are able to carry firearms into colleges. Giving them the freedom to carry firearms in colleges does not equate to an increase necessarily in gun violence in Texas campuses.
Okay, because the question or what whenever we're making some sort of gun law, we're trying to balance two things. We're trying to balance that people with guns probably have a higher propensity towards violence because they can solve problems with the gun when maybe they would have tried to find other solutions if they didn't have a gun. So you have an increase in violence from having guns, but then you also have a decrease in violence from everyone else having guns. Maybe you're more scared to commit violence because these people might be armed. Or maybe you're in the middle of a violent situation and somebody stops you with a gun, and that prevents the future people that could have been killed if you hadn't been stopped. And so you have these two statistics, these two forces that are working
100%.
past each other. And so the question should always be, I don't think it's a question of freedom, I don't think it's a question of rights, I think it's a question of, does whatever proposed solution decrease, or does it the equation bear out? Are there more prevented gun deaths and injuries than the ones that are caused? That's mainly what we're looking for when we're doing guns. So in Texas, are there statistics? Have there been, like, what happened when they introduced this gun thing? Because if we can find an answer to that, that would be really valuable to the gun conversation. So do you guys know if in Texas there were?
I don't know the numbers offhand, but looking over it, I believe there's 10 states in the United States that allow students to carry on campus in their state, whether it be through you have to have a concealed, like in Texas, you have to have a concealed carry license. But there are 10 states that allow students to carry on campus. And looking at the gun violence data from each one of those states, there has been no, like, basically significant seen increase in gun violence committed at those campuses in those states where their students are allowed to carry on campus.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. And to throw you a bone as well, the thing a lack of school shootings is kind of hard to track. Like, how do you measure the fact that there haven't been shootings? You know what I mean? And
right.
So when you're looking at the positive end, it's very difficult to be like, well, we haven't had a school shooting in a year, and it's like, well, would you have had it otherwise? You know, it's hard to measure a lack of something, I think, especially with something that's relatively rare in the world. Maybe not as much in the U.S., but relatively rare. So I understand. I just think that if you're going to be making prescriptions about how guns should be used, it's very important that you know, or that you have an understanding of why you would want it to be that way. I get very uncomfortable when we talk about we're doing it for the sake of rights. There should be a deeper conversation than that, I think. I think that's really important. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Do you guys have any other thoughts about general gun legislation that we feel like we've left off the table?
I was just going to say, I believe it was I don't remember if it was last year, the year before. I think it was like 80,000 women that prevented rape by use of firearm. That was some data actually that we were using to kind of support our case for why we should be able to carry on campus. And I've had I've talked to several people on campus that have been either involved or they've been involved in some kind of violent act on campus that happened to them. Like there was one girl I remember specifically come up to the table that she was involved in a sexual assault on campus, and she said that she believed it would have been prevented had she been able to carry a gun.
Yeah, I think that's a really important statistic too. That's something that I think that the people who are pretty anti-gun, they aren't putting that into the equation, especially after something as horrific like a public shooting or something like that. They aren't putting into the equation the amount of lives that are saved by guns, or the amount of situations that are saved by guns. So I think there is really a valuable lesson in understanding how that works. The other thing too that I found somewhat ironic is that a lot of left-leaning people who have been talking about who have been begging for less guns, restrictions on guns, are now wanting to purchase guns because of the recent administration and the way that they've been handling things like ICE. Or some other things like that. And I don't think any of that is funny, but what I will say is that it's ironic at the very least. And so I think that's been an interesting sentiment. Like, if there's one thing that the horribleness of that situation can do, it's to illuminate people what an authoritarian government could actually look like. And I think that this is a really valuable lesson.
Okay, with using that as an example, I actually do encourage the idea, because being a proponent for the Second Amendment doesn't equate to you being a MAGA Republican, right? If anything, it's a plausible act of you knowing your civic sense. And the fact of these folks, they're starting to realize that there is a positive outcome into possibly owning a gun in defense from an authoritarian regime. I will be on your side for that matter, because I think you are more than capable enough and more than responsible enough to create that decision making. And for all that matter is that I support you. I understand, I hear you out, and we are currently facing the same struggle in a sense. While we are facing the same problems, we just happen to have different ways of trying to fix it. And with civil discussions such as platforms like this, maybe we could both create a better society altogether, whether you are a libertarian like me, or whether you are a left-leaning socialist, or someone who is just a regular person in general. Like, just a general population person doesn't go big into politics, but just is concerned about for their well-being.
Yeah, and I think one of the accusations for libertarians and then people who identify themselves as the center, the accusations is that a lot of the times that they're really just Republicans. They're really
like
just
enablers,
yeah. And so I guess, how do you guys feel broadly about this current administration in regards to how they fit within like a libertarian framework? I have my own thoughts about this, but I guess, like, how do you guys feel about recent government policies or actions, and then how they fit into a libertarian framework? Do you feel like this current administration has been very libertarian? How do you guys feel?
Okay. No, if we want to kind of look at, so I feel like this current administration has been kind of all over the place a little bit on that, especially with, like, if we want to look at the most recent thing that's going on right now, where we're at war with Iran.
An illegal war on Iran.
Right, where
for that matter,
President Trump did not seek approval from Congress, and
let me check that out.
That's kind of one of our main ideals is to end war, because we're not proponents of war. We're not proponents of taking American tax dollars and using it to basically just waste it on destroying an entire country,
killing other people.
Right.
And in short, I don't think we should be putting ourselves into another war. We just recovered from a pandemic which handicapped the nation for over a year. And I think you don't have to be very libertarian or very authoritarian or whatever label you are to realize that, yeah, Trump messed up big time into dragging us into another war, a country that's way bigger than any country that we've gotten ourselves into our war with. Iran is like, 4 times the size of Texas, with 4 times the population, with more extreme climate. First, we weren't successful in Afghanistan, and we're now putting ourselves into quite possibly a nuclear fallout even. It's egregious. It's irresponsible. All that just so that he could cover himself up and his cronies and all those folks who have been funding his campaign. I'm not going to explicitly state it because.
Are we talking about the Epstein files? Is that what you're referring to, or is this another cover-up?
I think we know what we're talking about. I believe it's the Epstein files. Yeah, ding, right on the money, right on the APAC money, I guess.
Right. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with too much on that. What I will say to you though is that let it not cover up the bad Iranian leadership that existed before we attacked them. I do
Right.
think that two
Right.
things can exist at the same time.
Correct.
The only other thing that I'll point out, though, is the general anti-war sentiment.
Mhm.
I'm pretty agnostic about interventionalism. Like, I'm pretty, like, I think that, like, when you look at a situation like World War II or something like that, like,
Yep.
even if we weren't attacked in Pearl Harbor, we still should have, gotten involved in that war, I
Right.
think. And I think that you can maybe make the case for other interventions. Like, this is the cope that they use. Post hoc, they do this after they did the attack because they need to find a reason as to why they attacked them in the first place. But with Venezuela and then Iran, it's frustrating because they are kind of correct in that the current leadership there is, like, pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And, like, worth
Right.
worth
Right.
intervening, worth overthrowing. But that's not the exact question that we're asking when we say, or should we do it? How involved should we be? Like, and stuff like that. And especially if you're not going to get approval, it's like just a super shady decision.
Very
Right,
good questions.
right.
Very good questions. Because, like, I believe that there were a bunch of protests that have been happening in Iran prior to the invasion, right? And that a good hundreds of people have been, like, mysteriously disappeared. Hundreds to in the realms of, like, 10,000s even. But however, I've come to realize, when did Iran ever attack America? When did Venezuela ever attack America?
They attacked us with words, Cebastian, which is even more serious than actual attacking.
I don't think the First Amendment applies to them, but
That's
yeah.
true. That's true. Okay, yeah, I think that's definitely the more topical one. I think. I mean, how did you guys feel generally about, like, the deployment of ICE? How did you guys feel generally about some of the other things that were happening? Or how about the canceling of, was it Jimmy Kimmel, or Colbert? Sorry,
Stephen Colbert,
Yeah.
yeah.
How did you guys feel about these actions as well?
With ICE is kind of a very, if you want to make a pun out of it, it's thin. You're on thin ice when you're talking about ICE, right?
Yeah.
So I genuinely believe that the ideals that ICE carry, I think that they're trying to do something good. I genuinely think they are trying to do something good. I think that a lot of the ways that they
execute Yep.
what they're doing is very bad.
Literally. Sure.
Like, I mean, we've all seen the news of people being killed over trying to arrest people, mass rioting. And I think they're trying to do the right thing, but they're going about it the wrong way.
And they're also looking into trying to deport, like, just migrants in general, illegal or sometimes even legal with some loopholes that just allows them to. I think they should go more after with, like, the cartels, the illegal smuggling of products, children, that sort of stuff, like the smuggling of drugs, like they have been for the past 20 years. But now from the outside looking in, I've read into a news article where a good chunk of ICE agents are just doing it for the love of the game. I hate using that term for this topic. And as an immigrant, yes, I am concerned. I immigrated here with my family. It's a very privileged process to be able to be here in the U.S. and to be able to do it in the legal process. And it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be able to do that. And I also recognize that it is indeed privileged that, yeah, my mom and dad were able to have that chance while other people don't. That's why they have resorted to moving here illegally. I think that even Elon Musk should also be concerned with whether, like, ICE is like just right outside of his mansion or in his private island, right? So, and I also as a principled libertarian, I just don't support three-letter agencies in general, whether it be the CIA or the IRS or whether it be the FBI to some pedigree.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that the ICE stuff, and what's frustrating too with the deployment of it is that the whole point of deportations is to boost the numbers of people deported under his presidency. I don't think that there's anything principled about what's happening, because
right.
I would try to word it in a more aggressive way than you guys worded it, but what I would say is that I kind of agree with you that I don't have a principled objection against deporting illegal immigrants. I don't have a principled objection, and I actually don't have a principled objection towards spending money to do it or the way that it's done. But right now, the purpose is not to deport illegal immigrants. It's something else. It's to scare off democratic states, or it's to scare off states that are Democrats. It's the point is to boost the numbers. The intention is not to do what ICE is intended to do. And beyond that, you have some of the least trained, most power-hungry people on the planet operating these procedures as well, and that's what causes the horrific executions. And these wouldn't be as bad if you didn't have a party defending it. Like, that's like the cherry on top. It's like, if we could just admit that this was a mistake, it would be fine, but they're not. They're like doubling down, and I think that's the frustrating part too.
And they're trying to expand the budget even more by threefolds from I don't know, but they're trying to expand the budget even more. That's why they're at a lockdown right now. It's also quite disheartening that they really are just doing it so that they could get a one up on the Democrat side or in the Democrat states to say, oh yeah, we are going to deport a good amount of these illegal immigrants, right? It's like, what are they trying to gain out of this? They are trying to gain out of this by politicking like our immigration policy. They are trying to get out of this by just bigotry. That's the word I've been looking for. Just racism and bigotry in general is what probably have driven them into making this a bigger topic than it should have been in the first place. It's trying to dehumanize it's trying to dehumanize immigrants in general. There is a worthy cause in trying to just making things go better by making our immigration policy at least be less discriminatory in a sense, and also that maybe they should have done it legally than illegally and have stayed here legally instead of illegally, because we have laws here. But I'm not going to go after the fact that, yeah, they should just be treated like animals. They should be caged like as if they were rabid dogs. They're humans. They are made in the image of God. And I think that America should, I'm going to quote a Democratic nominee for this Texas Senate, which I heavily disagreed with. America should be like a house on which the door is locked, but there is a welcome mat, like in front of the door. So please knock.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to unpack and a lot of things to say.
It is a very nuanced topic.
Yeah, I think that the problem with legal immigration is that it gets so preposterously backed up that there just is no real expectation that you can get into the country even if you do it in the legal means.
Right.
Like, some people are projected to wait 10 years to get into the country, and it's like, you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that it justifies the action, but like, you have to be somewhat understanding and you have to seek to actually change the process to make it easier.
Right.
And that requires a lot of funding, I think. That requires a lot of money. That requires increasing taxes, probably, if we want to have that kind of immigration reform, I think. The other thing, too, how did you guys feel about, do you guys have any thoughts on the Stephen Colbert thing?
How long was it before they canceled the show? It's about...
How long had it been, or how long has it been since they canceled it?
How long was it canceled for before they let him back on?
Oh, I don't think it was that long.
It was like a couple weeks.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Yeah. So the thing is with, it seems like it's gotten more.
I think
It seems like as the years have gone by, celebrities have gone more and more and more political. Like that, like the political outreach to their fans and stuff. I don't think his show should have been canceled
for that
just
reason.
for the reason of him speaking. I will say I do think that celebrities should stick to what they're good at. You know, if you're an actor, stick to making movies. If you're a singer, stick to singing. Don't try and sway people politically just because you have a big name. But I will say at the same time, that is your right.
On an unrelated matter, I just wish that the show had been canceled for a different reason and purpose, because I'm not a big fan of the guy.
Right, me either.
But however, I don't think he should have gotten flack because of that reason, for the sole reason of speaking, because that's what given like Charlie Kirk like a platform. That's also how Ben Shapiro also got a platform. That's how we got a platform as well, just because we started talking about stuff that we believed in. So I think it's also like a big cabal of like just what you shouldn't have done or what you should do, which I don't think that the invisible hand, which is the government, should try to infringe upon that, because we have the First Amendment to just handicaps the government into you just being like you being in the fear of like being censored of what you want to say out into the world, or even to just your friend in general or your family, or just like speaking.
Yeah. When was the last time there was broad support for a Democratic candidate or nominee from Libertarians? To me, just going off of vibes, it feels like the Libertarian Party voted for Trump in 2020. Or, sorry, in 2024.
In 2024.
Is this true? Like, when was the last time you guys supported a Democratic candidate?
We'd rather support well, not necessarily like when was the last time we supported a Democratic candidate. Then again, us libertarians mainly are nonpartisan. We would vote Democrat on some issues like the legalization of weed, or some of the more socially liberal libertarians are more pro-choice, and some of the more conservative libertarians are more pro-gun, more pro-liberty, just overall. That in that realm, as a principled libertarian, I would possibly just vote for straight ticket libertarian, because that's what I believe in. While folks would say, "Oh, you're just throwing your vote away. You're just allowing for Trump to get elected, or you're allowing Kamala to get elected." I don't care. I've made my decision. I've voted for a libertarian candidate, and in hopes for that the Libertarian Party might grow or might not grow. But then again, I've made my choice on whether to not vote or to vote. But we will support our politicians into voting pro-liberty with a pro-liberty track record, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of less of a which side is it that we support, and it's more of a what policies does each candidate bring to the table, because we're not necessarily, we don't care whether they're red or blue. We care about what policies that they support. Are they pro free speech? Are they pro 2A? Are they pro I can't think.
Are they also just pro you in general?
Yeah, are they pro individualist?
Like just their interests. Like, do they take APEC money or not? That's now a big consideration that a lot of prospective voters are now trying to have, whether they receive APEC money or not.
So while our organization does support a lot of Republicans
points,
it's not because of what party they identify with. It's because they go along with our philosophy and what we believe.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's hard because I understand what you guys are saying. I just think that maybe because of my intuitions or the perspective I currently have, there are certain things that would just be massive red flags that, as a libertarian, would have never made me vote for Trump. I think that January 6th alone is enough for me to question the integrity of the intentions of him as just like a person. As a governmental body, I agree that Republicans are definitely more libertarian than Democrats as like a party. But I thought that Trump as a person was going to kind of inhibit that because of the way that he kind of takes what he wants. And it's not really following the rules that we vote for, as we can see now. Right. And I think that January 6th would have been an illuminating enough situation for us to have predicted that. To be like, look, we're not saying a lot about the Republican Party here, but this guy, this person seems to obviously want to operate outside of the general rules. And so for me, it feels like the Libertarian Party could have predicted that they should not be voting for Trump in 2024. But I don't know. I think they did vote for Trump primarily in 2024.
I think the reason for that is that this past election was honestly probably the most glaring example of
why the two-party system is very dangerous.
Yes, that and I think that the Libertarians chose to vote for the less evil, I would say. It's kind of like you're not choosing good versus bad, you're choosing
bad versus worse.
Bad versus worse in the sense of policy with Trump running his whole campaign off of, we're going to release the Epstein files, which we haven't seen yet. I mean, they've only released about half of them. We're gonna end the war in Ukraine, and we're gonna do all this great stuff. And with Kamala's campaign, she kind of didn't really have anything to run on. I mean, in that interview she had where she said when she was asked, would you have done anything different than Biden, and she said no.
I also cut some slack for Kamala, even though I disagree with her very much. She was only given like 100 days to turn the campaign all all around. So it was very hard for her to possibly have done like all the campaigning and all that, which she was also very close to possibly become our first woman president, which is an achievement for the biggest democracy in the world. But that also doesn't make for me to just say, yeah, I'm going to vote for Kamala because Trump this, Trump that. But I think folks who want to vote for Kamala should also just realize what Kamala's campaigns were all about. And a good amount of them do know. And a good amount of them, and if not all of them, probably have voted for Kamala because she is the mediator against like the growing rise of Trumpism in general.
Do you guys feel like I don't know, I don't need to ask who you guys voted for, but it seems like the Libertarian Party as a whole supported Trump in this last election. Do you guys feel like you got bamboozled? Does it feel like there were promises that were made that you didn't, that weren't fulfilled?
Yeah.
Most definitely, but I have to disclose the fact that I did not vote because I was 17 when...
Would you have voted? Well, yeah, I'm not...
Okay, and I also am not an American citizen,
yeah,
so
sure.
I have to disclose that too. But from the outside looking in, if I were to vote in that election,
If you could vote now for last
Yeah.
election, would you guys both have voted for Kamala Harris?
I would have voted for RFK Jr. Even though he dropped out,
Still would have wrote his name in?
still would have wrote his name in, or probably would have written my name in. Ronald Reagan, Queen Elizabeth, all for the more reasons, and for that matter, that both sucked. Horrendous.
If I could vote on it based on what I know now, I would have written in Thomas Massey's name.
You guys seriously wouldn't have preferred Kamala over this current presidency, knowing what you know now?
It's because Kamala doesn't reflect my viewpoints. But
But you
She
know that
could-
Trump doesn't now, though.
Trump never reflected my viewpoints either. So,
So
I also
imagine you
wouldn't
have the
voted for
option
Trump.
between Trump or Kamala. Those are the only two options.
Yeah.
And you get to know what you know now. You still wouldn't replace Trump with Kamala right now.
Oh shoot, you're just that.
Obviously, I know,
Yeah.
but here's why
And
I'm
that-
wording this
well,
question in this way is
Yeah.
because, and like I clarified earlier, you guys have been very, very good about outlining that you guys are bipartisan, and I feel that in the way that you guys speak.
Yeah.
However, when anybody, any libertarian or any centrist gets pressed on who they would have voted for, they still unanimously support Trump, even now. And so
Right.
I kind of am trying to get a little bit out of you guys that, like, a little bit of humility.
Very
I
conflicting.
will admit, I think that even knowing now with what has been going on, I think I probably still would have voted for Trump because the way that she kind of ran her whole campaign, and the fact that she had already spent 4 years in office as the vice president.
With very big responsibilities on
And-
top of being the vice president who just casts the tie-breaking vote. In regards to that, however, as speaking for myself too, that is a hypothetical where that is probably the only hypothetical where I could probably consider voting for Kamala, which I am going to be disagreeing with Layne, all for the more reasons that, because I don't know what the Kamala presidency is, because it is not happening right now. If we are in the alternative reality on where Kamala have won, we would probably be talking about different pressing topics. And those topics would probably be out of our imagination currently.
I
but
don't-
we could imagine it.
I don't agree with this at all. What about Biden's administration do you think was as anti-liberal as just the three examples about Trump that we just talked about, or anti-libertarian as the three examples of Trump that we just talked about?
Ooh.
Because Kamala was basically just parroting Biden's.
She was basically just Biden 2.0.
Yeah, and so
Right.
we could predict that it would have been just compare Biden's term to Trump's term if you could vote for Biden or Trump right now. Like, is there anything that's as libertarian as the three things that we just talked about with Trump?
So, and also in general, like, I also would like to remind myself who the president is, whether it's Bush, Obama, or Trump, or Biden, or whoever it is. We have three branches of government. So, maybe I'm going to just disagree, like, just not be a big fan of, like, what our president is doing, but at least two out of three or something like that.
Yeah.
Have the legislative be controlled by just anti-Kamala, or have the judicial system
Well,
be
I will say, as we've seen, the president has gone over one of said branches of government.
Yeah.
That's the exact point. Is that, like, when you are comparing Kamala and Trump, and you know that Trump has already done actions that are beyond the power of the presidency. You know he's already disagreed with these things, and then you look at Kamala Harris, who probably would have gotten bullied out of every single decision that she wanted to make, and then it's like you're choosing between two. It's like, at the very least, I know that Kamala's presidency would be on very strict guardrails. Like, even if all of her policies were something that I disagreed with, it would be a normal presidency within
Because
what the president can do.
you have a Democratic president, but you have
Yeah, you have a liberal president.
You have a liberal president, and you have conservative judicial and Congress.
And even if it were 3 Democratic things, you would not be seeing the illiberal actions that Trump has been committing recently, like going over the other branches.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, no matter what, Trump's presidency would have been this way because he is not limited by any of the powers of any of the government, because he's doing things that are extra executive. He's doing things beyond his power. And so to me, it seems like such an easy answer to be like, yeah, I would have voted for Kamala, because Trump he's not even acting within his realm of presidency. He is a force to be reckoned with no matter what the current state is. Layne, would you have voted for Kamala in this situation, or?
I feel like
it's frustrating that it's hard to get an answer from my perspective, because the accusation is that libertarians are supposed to be bipartisan, but it's like pulling teeth to get them to be democratic.
I'll be honest. I think, like, looking back from now, I honestly don't believe that having Kamala as a president would be as bad as a lot of people projected it to be. I think I tend to believe that the Liberal Party does still like to promote kind of individualism,
and that they have good intentions on where that they've stand on the position that could possibly benefit Americans, and they have Americans at heart too. But it's like I've said from a while back, is that we just both have different ways in trying to achieve that. But so I'm not going to be full on Team Blue, so I'm not fully on Team Red. Restating that.
It kind of sounds like you guys are kind of on Team Red, just because the question that I'm asking isn't, would you have voted for a Democrat or a Republican? The obvious answer is that historically Republicans have been better about libertarianism than Democrats. I'm asking very specifically about Donald Trump as
versus Kamala Harris.
Versus Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris could be a Democrat, and you can just view her as just the Democratic Party. But you can't view Trump as the Republican Party, because he's fundamentally kind of changed what a party is supposed to do. He's outside of the party.
I mean, looking back, he did get shot twice, and then like a lot of crazy stuff happened like since 2016. But I'm not going to try and justify why he is acting upon that. But yeah, after seeing those stuff, that probably has taken a toll on how he is acting right now, acting like a deranged child that he is currently, and that we are being disrespected right now as a laughing stock in the global stage, with like, oh yeah, Trump, like he's doing all these crazy things, and then he's making tariffs or whatnot, all for the reason of selling this scam to other people. Like he was on TV, he is no different than he is as a president, and he is a slimy dirtbag politician. Like he swore to destroy back in 2016. He has turned into that.
He's a very different president than he was in the 2016 term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree so. We're running
different.
on a little bit over than an hour, so I want to give you guys the final opportunity. So if there's any plugging for your organization or any other things that you guys want to encourage people to look at, please do. And also if there's a final message or theme for people who have made it this far in the episode, I encourage you guys to talk about that too. But it's really your opportunity to round the episode out.
Right. Layne, President?
Okay. Well,
President
I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I love to do stuff like this. But we're out every single week on Tuesdays here in the South Oval on campus. We're always out either with a table or with clipboards. We're still working to gain our petitions for our meal plan fight. But I mean, the only thing I would mainly like to say is that if you are, pro liberty, pro America, we'd love to see you come out and talk to us.
And even if you just disagree with our policies in general, even if you just don't like us, I think you have the freedom to formulate that opinion and be able to have a platform in just saying that. Because as a principled libertarian, we must support it, whether it is against our bias or whether it is for our bias. So, and another thing, thank you for reaching out to us, inviting us into your podcast. It's awesome. The crew's great, and the seats are, to be able to have this conversation. Wow, we wish that it could be a bit longer because it got really spicy and really fun at the end, like with talking about how this administration is going so far, and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of talking and discussion have been made, and that with more stuff like this, not necessarily like in a debate podcast form, but just to be able to talk to your neighbors again, to be able to talk to your classmates, your professors, your family, your mom and dad, just in general. Like I like that. It's one amazing thing that Americans like just have in general, and in the possibility in which you could join, we could join you guys again. Sure, we look forward to that as well. We look forward to talking to you guys more with possibly even different topics. We could probably work on like talking about different issues as well beyond the guns, the Trumpian legacy in general. Because yeah, it's a lot. This is not even like shit. This is just the tip of the iceberg, really. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you, too.
Yeah, thank you.